glad to be able to come in to talk with you again. What I want to do is talk about a topic that may not be the kind that makes you jump up and down, go, hooray, hurrah, this is an awesome topic, but it's something that if you want to find a trustworthy, marriage-minded guy and you want to get married and have an awesome relationship, it's something that you definitely want to take a look at. And it's something that I considered after I got married. I looked back over my shoulder and I saw a lot of the sabotaging behaviors that I had in my dating and relationship life. And with all the women that I talk with and that I coach, I've only been able to talk with one that I haven't been able to go, hey, you know, here's something that you might consider that could be holding you back. Because, as I've said before, by the time we get to be 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, a lot of us, we've got patterns, and some of those patterns are unhealthy. And so as I'm going to talk about 17 sabotaging behaviors that can keep you from getting the relationship that you're looking for. But I want to be sensitive, because as I go through these 17 sabotaging behaviors, I definitely don't want you to beat yourself up, right? I don't want you to go away and beat yourself up, because the reason why I have all of these on a list here that I'm going to share with you is because I did a lot of them, right? So I want you to be encouraged that even if you, after watching this video, if you think, oh my goodness, yeah, I do this thing and that thing and this other thing, I don't want you to beat yourself up, because there is hope. And if you would like to get married and find a trustworthy, marriage-minded guy, you can do it. All right. And really the beginning of it is recognizing, you know, some of the patterns that we have. So I want to give you these 17 things. And again, just sort of in your mind, think, okay, is that something that I struggle with? And if it is, what I want to invite you to do is get some coaching. I'd be happy to coach you. You can reach out to me at help@singleover30.net, and I'd be happy to help you through some of these things. Or reach out to a professional, someone who can help you get to the bottom of why you may be doing some of these things. Because all of our behaviors, they serve us in somehow, right? Serve us somehow. I feel like it's so dark in here. I'm not used to doing these at night. Okay. All right. So number one is, do you feel that you emotionally shut down when a man shows an interest in you, or when a relationship starts to become serious? So if you find that you do this, like you feel kind of like a hardness in your heart, or there's something that's holding you back, or maybe you get numb, right? You're excited about a relationship and then all of a sudden you shut down and you get numb. That could be a sign that you're afraid. There's been something that's maybe happened in your past, and when someone starts to move towards you, then you emotionally shut down. Deep down, do you doubt that you can love, or doubt that you're lovable? Either one of those things can cause us to engage in certain behaviors that could push someone away, or that could keep us from feeling the intimacy that we want to feel with another person. Number three, do you ever panic? And I'm holding my hand up here because I totally have done this. Do you ever panic when a man shows an interest, or after you get into a relationship with a man and it seems like it could be progressing? Is there something in you that just really starts to get really scared? I'll share a story real quick, and maybe you've heard this before, but there was a date, I was dating a guy before I got married to my husband, obviously before I got married to my husband, and I was on my way to go see him, and he lived in Denver and I lived in Colorado Springs, and I was in my car and I was driving to go see him, and I was excited, and then all of a sudden I like totally started to panic. But what that panic felt like is, it felt like hate. I felt like I hated this guy, and I didn't. I did not hate him. He was a really nice guy. But my response, that kind of biological response that I was having in my body, and that kind of fear that I felt, and also that hatred, those were signs that there was something wrong. And what I started to do is, as I went along in my relationship life, and as I was single for a while, I started to recognize these patterns. So I started to see, oh, okay, so that's something that's keeping me from moving forward. So I didn't give it as much voice in my life and in my relationships as I had done earlier. Before, it was just really confusing. Like, I didn't know why it was happening. But then I started to recognize why it was happening. So if you start to panic, that's a sign of something that you want to pay attention to, because it could cause you to sabotage your love life. Another one, if after the start, of a relationship, do you begin imagining what bad things could happen in the future, even though you're just getting acquainted with a guy. So this is a form of self-protection. And you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, how is imagining bad things? How could that be self-protection? Well, it's self-protection because what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure it out, right? We're trying to figure out everything that could possibly go wrong in a relationship so that we don't get hurt. And that can also cause us to sabotage. When a man tries to get to know you, do you pick him apart and find reasons that he isn't good enough for you? So I did this after I got hurt. I had a really bad breakup in my early 20s. You may have heard me talk about it. And one of the behaviors that came out of that relationship was that whenever a guy tried to move toward me or when someone expressed an interest in me, then I would always find something wrong with them, right? They were never good enough for me. And I remember my mom telling me, she said, Shana, I see you. You are holding guys at arm's length. And she could see it, but I couldn't see it because I only thought that I was being wise. I thought that I was just being, a better judge of a person than I was before, because I felt like, well, I have to get this right because I'm not going to be able to handle getting hurt again. So as a result, what I did was, because of that hurt that I had experienced, I pushed everybody away, right? And there weren't any guys that were good enough for me. After you've been deeply hurt in the past, and this goes along with what I was saying, did you make a promise to yourself to protect yourself from getting hurt in the future? And what I call these unhealthy vows. And I've done conferences on unhealthy vows and stuff. So an unhealthy vow is a form of self-protection. But the problem is, when it comes to relationships, we can make vows about all kinds of things. But the problem with these vows is we think that they're protecting us. Like, I'm never going to date anybody from work again. I am never going to open up my heart that way again. And I'm going to read some of these statements that we can make vows about. But these promises, we think they're protecting us, but they're not. What they're really doing is they're tying us all up in knots, and they're making it so that we can't be open. And so if you've made any promises to yourself, that's something to look at, because that can keep you from having a relationship. And I even hear women say, well, I don't really need anybody and I don't want a relationship, but really what's behind it, they really do. And it's okay if you don't want to get married. It's okay if you don't want a relationship. But a lot of these women, they really do want a relationship. But the thing is that they're saying that they don't, and they've made this vow that they don't need anybody because it's out of self-protection, right? Our hearts are so tender, man. It's like we're all just a little bit loopy when it comes to love and all this. We can just get so tangled up, right? And so wounded. So anyway, all right, let's see. Okay, and this goes along with what I was just saying. After getting your heart broken, did you tell yourself that you don't need a man in your life and that you're perfectly happy alone? And like I said, it's totally okay to want to be alone, but you want to make sure that you want to be alone for the right reasons, and it's not out of self-protection, it's not out of cynicism, it's not out of pain, but it's out of a place of health. Wherever you are in life, you want it to be out of a place of health. Do you date or marry people you aren't really interested in because you feel more comfortable and safer around them than someone you are highly drawn to? I was doing a conference in Southern California, and I was talking about these vows. And this woman came up to me afterward, and she was just beside herself. I mean, she was just crying. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody cry that hard. And she just wrapped her arms around me and just sobbed. And she said, I finally understand why I married 3 guys that I didn't love. And I talked to her for a minute, and she said that her father had been an alcoholic and that he had been emotionally unavailable to her. And so love didn't feel safe, right? Because here's this person who's this primary caregiver who's supposed to love her, but he's not always emotionally available to her because of his addiction. He was an alcoholic, I think I just mentioned that. And so love didn't feel safe. So as a result, whenever a man started to move toward her, she would feel scared. And so the ones that she felt safe with, that she didn't feel emotionally vulnerable with, were men who that she didn't love, that she didn't have any affection for, that she didn't have anything in common with. And so if you find yourself doing this, it could be a form of self-sabotage that comes out of self-protection. So some women, they may not marry guys, but they will date men that they aren't really interested in because that's easier for them, right? I've dated men in the past before I got married, and some of these guys, like, I wasn't even really interested in them, but it was easier for me, right? And it also had to do with some boundary stuff, which is a whole nother issue. Number 10, do you feel as if something is stopping you from fully giving your heart away, but you aren't sure what it is? Like, do you feel like there's something inside of you that's not quite right? Like you can't love, or you can't receive love. I had someone tell me when I was in college after I had my really bad breakup, they said, Shana, you can't receive love. And I didn't really see that or really understand that, but I couldn't really receive. So if you feel like there's something stopping you, either giving or receiving love or something else, like it's something to pay attention to. Lots of times we think that these things are just going to disappear, right? They're just going to go away on their own and fix themselves. But if you sense some stuff like this, what you want to do is pay attention to it. Don't just wait for it to go away. Be intentional, right? Because time's ticking and time's passing, and you want to find that person who can be special to you if that's your goal, right? Don't waste your time. Be intentional and purposeful about your healing. Do you get into relationships but you can never seem to make a long-term marital commitment? So some people are serial daters, right? They just jump from one person to the next, and maybe they date people for long periods of time, but they never make a marital commitment, even though they say that's what they really want. Well, this is a form of sabotage, right? And it could be there could be different reasons that they're doing that. But if that's something that you've wrestled with, then it's something to pay attention to, right? And again, don't beat yourself up. Just recognize that if there's anything that I'm saying that you identify with, that's awesome, because that means that's a place where you can grow, and that's a place where you can move forward and move closer to the relationship that you're really looking for and that you really want. Do you feel that it's not safe to love, or that loving a man isn't safe? Right? Sometimes, we feel unsafe because we're afraid of the opposite sex. Like some women I work with, they're afraid of men. Maybe not even because of abuse, but maybe because of some messaging that they got growing up. And so as a result, it scares them. So they feel like love is not safe. And there's some different things that you can do in your dating and relationship life to help promote that sense of safety. One of those things that I often talk about is stages, and taking your time and learning how to express what you need and asking for what you need and setting boundaries and all that kind of stuff. 13, are you determined that you won't ever make a mistake and marry the wrong person like others such as your parents or your peers? Now you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with that one? Well, the thing about that is that our wounds sometimes, like I said, will make us very protective and selfish. They'll make us very self-focused. It's not that we mean to be that way. It's just that when we've been hurt, what we're doing is we're trying to protect our hearts. And so when we see other people who have been hurt, or we have been hurt, sometimes we'll go, my life's not going to be like that. And it will cause us to be overly self-protective, to be self-focused, and it will also cause us to be perfectionistic, right? Because we have to get it right. If we don't get it right, then I'm going to get hurt, and I'm not going to get hurt like those other people got hurt, and I'm not going to get hurt like I got hurt in the past, right? And so we have all kinds of rules around relationship, and it will cause us to be perfectionistic and say, not doing it like that, right? So it actually creates an inflexibility in us, and so we're not as open as we could be. All right, 14. So have you ever said any of these? Goes along with the vows that I was just talking about. Have you ever said, I will never allow a man to love me. I'm not going to let a man into my heart unless I know for sure that it's going to work out. So sometimes I talk to women, they say, I don't want to date. I just want to meet somebody. I just want to know. Well, if you just want to know, and you want to know for sure that a relationship is right and that it's going to work out, and that's what you're looking for, my question is, what are you going to lean on for that surety or that certainty? Is it an emotion? What are you leaning on? Because anything that you're leaning on to indicate to you that a relationship is right at the very beginning, or you just want to know for sure that it's going to work out before you jump in, right? Those are probably not good indicators, because the best indicator is time, right? And relationships take time to develop. All right. Have you ever said, I won't allow myself ever to be vulnerable, enough to get hurt again? I'm not ever going to open up my heart again. I'm not ever going to allow a man to see the real me. I'm not ever going to trust a man again. And even if you say, I don't trust men, right, and make blanket statements like that, it's something you want to pay attention to. I am never going to allow myself to need a man. I'm not going to take anything from a man. I'm not going to share what is mine. I'm not ever going to really share my true heart, my true self, my true identity. I'm not ever going to allow someone to treat me poorly again. I'm not ever going to let a man see me cry. There was a woman who was at a conference that I did, and she was talking to me about how when she was a kid, she said she remembered being twirled up in the curtains. You know how little kids will twirl up in the curtains? And she said she thought, I'm not going to cry because it never does any good. And so for like 50 years, I think it was, I can't remember exactly how long it was, but it was a long time. Like it was decades that she was shut down, and she never cried in front of anyone because she made this promise that that's how she was going to be safe. So just imagine what kind of intimacy that was robbing out of her life, because she'd made this promise to herself that was made out of hurt and out of self-protection, that she was never going to cry. And so these are the kinds of things that sabotage and make it so that we can't move forward in relationship. Okay, so number 15, do you pick fights with a man if it starts to get serious and you're in a relationship with him? So there was another time I was working at a camp. It was for abused and neglected kids. And I remember at the beginning of this camp, the camp social worker came into a room, and she was telling all of us, I was a counselor, she was saying, don't be surprised if at the end of the week, if some of the campers become kind of volatile. And I thought, well, that's not going to happen to me, because I had worked at this camp before. I'd never had any problems with any of the kids. But it was really interesting. Towards the end of the week, the little girl that I had been counseling, she started screaming at me at the top of her lungs and started telling me that she hated me and that she wished I had never been her counselor and that she wanted nothing to do with me, right? And I was really hurt. I didn't really understand what that was about. And I was in my 20s, and I went and found my mentor on the grounds there, and she said, don't you remember what the camp social worker said? She said, this little girl loves you, and that's why she's doing that. And so what she was doing was she was trying to push me away by creating a fight with me. She was grappling with her feelings of love towards me, and it was hurtful towards her and painful. And so what she did was she was picking a fight with me. And we're not really that different than little kids sometimes. Sometimes adults can do that too. We may cause conflict in relationships without realizing it because we're afraid. So again, this is something to pay attention to if you start to feel really vulnerable if someone gets close to you. Number 16, and I talk about this one a lot, but do you jump into relationships quickly based off chemistry or high sexual attraction? So again, this is one of those things that sometimes we because we've been duped into thinking that this is a measure of how you decide if a relationship is good or not, then we'll jump into the relationship, and that's a problem because we don't know the person. A person is made up of all kinds of stuff. They're like a pie, right, with different pieces. And the attraction part is just one part of that pie. And so we don't want to use that as a gauge for how quickly we should move into a relationship. So again, this can cause relationship sabotage. And this can go along with the serial dating thing too, right? Especially if we find someone we're attracted to, jump in, find someone else we're attracted to, jump in, we don't take our time. And number 17, do you commit quickly based off of a spiritual feeling or the thought that God told me that this is the person for me? I have coached so many women who have come to me and told me that they had some sort of emotional feeling or a spiritual feeling, or that God told them something. And I'm not saying that, I believe in God. I believe that God can work in our lives. But the best indicator that something is real or not is if time proves that it's real, right? There's been women that I've talked to who have told me that they just knew for sure that someone was right for them, and they jumped into a relationship, and then 6 months, 12 months later, they had to back up the relationship truck, and then they broke up. Their hearts were broken, right? So these things can cause sabotage in our lives, and I don't want that to happen to you. So here's my thing again. Don't beat yourself up if you can relate to any of these, but what you do want to do is you want to get some help figuring out, okay, what's behind this? Like, if I'm doing some of these things, why am I doing them? And remember that you deserve to be loved, that you're created to be loved, that you're worthy of being loved, and that you can love, and that you can give and receive love. There was a long period of time where I didn't feel like I could love, and I didn't feel like I could receive love. So if you feel like that, or you identify with any of these things, I'm holding up my hand and say, I get it, because I identify with many of them as well, or identified with many of them as well. So again, if you want more free dating and relationship advice, head on over to singleover30.net and sign up for something that's on the homepage. I have a bunch of downloads there, free advice and some freebies and such. And then also I'm going to be doing an online dating challenge. I'm putting it together right now. It's going to be a little bit different than the one that I did in the summer with a lot of the same content, but it'll be a little bit different. I'll be offering more stuff to you. So I just invite you to keep your eyes open for that. And if you're not on my email list yet, head on over to singleover30.net, get one of those freebies off the homepage, or sign up on the form on the bottom of the homepage, and then you'll get information from me about the online dating challenge. This challenge is going to be a lot of fun. If you are frustrated with online dating, if you've thought it's horrible, if you feel like there aren't any good guys on there at all, if you are afraid to try it, you're afraid of putting yourself out there, or if you want to try it but you're kind of hesitant, you don't know how to do it, if you're afraid there's only scammers online, you're afraid of getting online because of that, I'm going to help you with all of that stuff, right? So I'm going to give you an online dating strategy that you can use online so that it's kind of fun, and to move from online to offline so that you can actually get dates, learn how to talk to guys, all different kinds of cool stuff. So again, head on over to singleover30.net and sign up. So that way you'll get information from me about the challenge when I am ready for you. All right? I hope you're having a good night. Talk soon. Bye.